Hi, you guys. Little nasally, so sorry. All right, I'm on page 73, and we're going to read Exodus. Banks, sit down. Sit. Banks just wants to say hello. Okay. Then the people started leaving. So remember, Colonel Dye has taken over the plantation. And so he gave them the option to stay or to leave. But the people had always left from here. All through slavery, people was trying to get away from the South. The old masters and the patrollers used to go after the people with dogs. If you was a good slave, a good worker, they would bring you back home and beat you. Some of the masters would brand their slaves. So just like you brand a horse with, right? You put the branding stick in fire and then you would brand the animal. And that's what they were doing to their slaves too. If you was one of the troublemakers always trying to run away, then they would bring you back and sell you to a trader going to New Orleans. If you give them any trouble in the swamps, they would just kill you back there. I knowed a man who wouldn't come back and they had to shoot him. He told them he'd rather they shoot him down like a dog than go back. And he tore his shirt open to let them shoot at his heart. They shot him right where he was and left him back there for the buzzards. We had a bayou some 5 miles from where I lived that they called the Dirty Bayou. You need to know this. The people used to run in the bayou to throw the dogs off of their scent, and that's how the patrollers used to catch them. The bayou was too wide and boggy, and the slaves couldn't swim. They had to wade over, and that's how the patrollers would catch them. The patrollers would put the gun on them and holler for them to come back. If they didn't come back, the patrollers would shoot them in the water or make them drown trying to get away. But many of them made it, not trying to wade over. It was too wide and the mud too sticky. They used to build wharfs. They would go in the swamps every night or every chance they got, and they would work little by little till they had finished. Then they would edge the wharf in the water and head out. These was the smart ones. The dumb ones tried to wade over, and that's when they got caught. The bayou got more people in it than the graveyard, and that's why it's called the Dirty Bayou. Now, after the Yankee soldiers in the Freedom Bureau left, the people started leaving again. Not right away, because Mr. Frederick Douglass said, give the South a chance. But when the people saw they was treated just as bad now as before the war, they said to heck with Mr. Frederick Douglass and started leaving. The old masters didn't think too much of it at first. They was glad they were leaving. If they got rid of all the bad, then the only ones leaving anyhow, if all of them left, there wouldn't be no more trouble. They didn't know it at first, but it wasn't just the bad ones leaving. Droves after droves of good and bad was leaving. If you went to town, you would see whole families going by. Men in front with bundles on their backs, women following them with a child in their arm and holding another one by the hand. And now seeing this, the old masters did start worrying. Who is going to pick the cotton now? Who is going to cut the cane? So he's talking sugar cane. They went to Washington. It was the North enticing them for their votes. The Yankees pretended they wanted to help the South back on their feet, but all they wanted to do is control the South. The people in Washington called the colored and asked them if it was true that the North was buying their vote. The colored said no. They was leaving because they couldn't get fair treatment in the South. Now the old masters came back and tried to force the people to stay. They turned the clans, the Ku Klux Klan, loose on them, the Camellias of Louisiana, the White Brotherhood, loose on the people. The people still went. They slipped away at night. They took to the swamps. They still went. So that's Exodus. That's a quick chapter. But it's telling us about all the people that are leaving. So, there's more economic opportunity in the North. We see that when we watch Emmett Till, right? And we heard about you know, how people were moving to Chicago and New York, and um, there's more opportunity. You can make more money and you get better treated. So it was a win-win. So the South lost slavery, and then they lost their freed slaves. A lot of them left. Some stayed, but a lot of them left, and they hit the big towns. Boston. Frederick Douglass actually comes to Boston. He spends the rest of his life living in Lynn, and that's where he dies. They go to New York. They go to Chicago. So those big industrial places they went to. There's not really much in here to really journal. I think maybe one of the things you can think about journaling is if you've seen it yourself. Maybe your family left from somewhere and went somewhere else because there was more work. And, you know, those of you in my honors class that we read The Grapes of Wrath, same thing, right? They left and they migrated to where there was work. And so you could compare this with The Grapes of Wrath as your journal entry. You can compare it to the people in Mississippi that leave, you know, Emmett Till's grandfather, Mose, Willie Reed, right? They all leave. They leave for protection, but they also leave and get better jobs, right? So um, Mose went to New York, and I think he worked as a custodian, if I remember correctly, but he made good money and he lived a long life. So you could write about that, or you can write about your own experience moving because maybe your family moved to get better work. Okay. Up next is Ned Leaves Home.